Hello everyone, this is Shintai, and I'm greeted again by my good friend Hyper Anime Reviews. Back by popular demand. Thank you to everyone who really liked the previous commentary we did and asked for more. We heard your cries, and we decided to do it again. The plan that we have is we want to address all of the quote-unquote controversial episodes, or at least episodes that are kind of seen as the lesser episodes of Fate Zero, which we said was primarily episode 1, episode 10, which we're going to cover now, and I'd say the final episode as well, mostly because of the ending, so
we could do like the 2 final episodes. We'll see when we get there.
We might combine the last 2 episodes as one big commentary.
It's kind of funny because I don't remember what happens in this episode. Like, I remember what happens in the show in general, but I don't remember what events happened during which episodes. So I'm like, why does everybody hate episode 10 again? I guess we'll see.
For the uninitiated listening to this is episode 10, which is the episode where it's basically dedicated to Rin. I think the episode's literally called Rin's Adventure. The common criticism of the episode is that it feels like filler, it doesn't add much. You know, it's been a while since I've seen the episode, so we're gonna watch it, we're gonna commentate over it. I'm gonna do the countdown real quick. We're gonna start in 1, 2, and 3. So, I see a book.
And some candles.
Show's looking gorgeous as ever. And see, this is good use of CGI with hand-drawn animation, because it's, I think CGI usually doesn't work well when it's doing more organic things, but since these are just like crystals and stuff, the CGI actually like fits, and it looks fine.
Yes. Well, I've always felt like that CGI, it's fine if you do it with like inorganic things. So yeah, like crystals or machines, those are usually the way to go. But also, like, this show just also has a really good blend of 2D animation and 3D animation. And I think it's because of its use of shadows too, like it. And lighting in general.
So, the first episode didn't have an opening for whatever reason. I guess there was just too much shit that they had to go through. So, yeah. This one we have the opening. So, I wouldn't say this is like a particularly amazing opening or anything, but I think it's a pretty solid one, personally. I think it's pretty good.
It is. It is great compared to so many others. Definitely, it's not like the best thing ever, but it is very good.
Yeah, I think it's a very solid opening. I don't think there's really anything particularly wrong with it. We get nice shots of all the characters. The animation is good, as to be expected.
I definitely think that this little sequence of Saber transforming, that is lovely.
Yeah, I think it looks really good.
But yeah, you know, it's a bunch of the characters just kind of showing off. But then they have a bunch of battles.
I think the song sounds a little generic. The singer has a great voice, though. She sounds really good. But it's just not a particularly memorable song.
I remember really liking this song the first time I heard it, but I think that this particular type of song, and especially this musician, I don't remember her name. She's been used a lot today.
Lisa.
She's also been used in a lot of Sword Art Online. We've heard her a lot. I think that might be one of the reasons.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So we have little elementary school. I guess it's different in Japan. I guess it's called primary school or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I can kind of understand some contention with this episode in that we've had all this really dark stuff going on. You know, the Holy Grail War is not fun and games. And then we have little elementary school Rin, you know, doing her little stuff at school and doing her little magic tricks. But I think on one hand, sure, I can understand it can create a weird contrast, but I think it also works in its own way too. For one, this is a really dark show, so I think it's for having at least one episode where they tone it down a bit. I don't think that's a huge issue.
Well, I mean, you could imagine watching the show on a weekly basis, and then you get an episode like this, which is kind of separated from the main plot. Maybe that's why so many people are bothered by it, because
I think, yeah, I think you're right. The mentality of watching a show weekly compared to if you're binge watching it is very different.
Because I'm watching this show on a website with a bunch of comments, and they're all pretty much just being like, "Oh, this is filler," and like get back to the main plot. So I'm kind of I'm interested in seeing if it really is that bad. Personally, I think that the Fate universe is always very fast because there are so many characters to look at. So I like these little things where you get to see the magic in work and in progress.
Yeah, we get a little bit more insight of how magic works, and you know, there's so much to the lore and like the way that the world building works and all that. So I think this, not to say that this episode is exclusively dedicated to that, but I think it shining some light on it, I think, plays its own part.
Yes.
Now, I think this also serves as not really fan service per se, but I think it does, in a way, throw a bone to fans of Fate Stay Night, because Rin is a much more important and key character in Fate Stay Night than she is in Fate Zero. In Fate Zero, this is really all she gets. This is one episode and a few scenes here and there. So I think it's a nice way to also, like, you know, give a nice wink to Fate Stay Night fans and be like, hey, you know, here's a little something.
I definitely think that that's a big part of it, but I do think that it is cool seeing Tsukiyomi is in this light of him being, you know, just
a father.
Yeah, a father, and because while he's not evil, he is definitely framed a little bit villainous in the show at times. And here he just comes off like a guy.
Yeah, the show does have a tendency to show him in a very pragmatic way,
yeah,
which may make him seem a little detached, a little dehumanized. And I do think it is good that this episode does show that, no, you know, he's a dad. He cares for his daughter. Even though he may have done some things that are questionable. He's not a heartless person. So I think this episode does do a good job in showing a more human side to his character. This is really cool. This fucking weird ass book.
Yeah, I remember this.
She tries to close it and she can't.
I mean, stuff like this is just pretty cool, honestly. Like, I love these little things in the world where it's like, oh, he just casually has these books that could potentially
kill Rin if she was home alone.
And him realizing, like, okay, she's starting to become more curious about this sort of thing. He should have taken more precaution. So now he's giving her this little trinket and be like, hey, look, now you'll have a better idea of what you should and shouldn't mess with. Rin actually in Fate Stay Night has a very interesting line of dialogue where I think she's talking with Shiro, and she has this appearance of being like the honor student. She's perfect, this and that. And Shiro kind of asks, like, what's up with that? And she says that, like, she has to be ideal so that when she finally meets her dad in heaven, that he can be proud of her.
Mm. So these kidnapped children, like, are they being kidnapped by the master of Castor?
Yeah. So Castor gave his master some magical trinket that allows him to hypnotize children.
Okay, so now it's during the war. Like, time passed, because in the beginning of this episode, it wasn't during the war.
Yeah, because Tokiomi is not with her right now, so it's kind of jumping back and forth.
Okay.
It may seem a little confusing, but if you just think about it, I mean,
yeah.
You realize, like, oh yeah, Tokiomi's not at his house. Like, I think he is at his house, but his wife and his daughter are not with him. So if you just think about it for a second, like, oh yeah, that scene had to have taken before the events of the war. They just don't make it clear because they respect the intelligence of their viewers to kind of, put the pieces themselves.
I heard someone say that Rin was being stupid in this episode because she goes out alone at night when there's a kidnapper. But she's a kid, and she wants to help, but she also wants to prove something.
Okay, first off, let's look at it from her perspective. Yes, one, she wants to help. Two, this is a kidnapper. She probably is assuming he is a normal human, not knowing it's actually Castor's master and he's got some fuckery, some magical fuckery. She's probably thinking, hey, I'm a little mage. I could probably take this guy on. I could probably do it and save these other kids. So to say that she's being stupid, I mean, I'd say from her perspective, she's not.
Yeah.
Oh man, the way that looked a second ago looked so beautiful.
Mm. There he is. I've always... what's up?
I was going to say, like, and at that moment, the compass reacted, but she already saw him with the kids, so she already figured out, like, okay, that has to be the guy, and that, even if she realizes, okay, there might be some magical fuckery with this guy, she's got to help at this point. She has to. I think she feels morally obligated at this point. She's a good-hearted person.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, you have to take all of that with, like, the fact that she's a kid.
You were going to say something?
Well, it's just that, like, I've always liked when you have these big adventures with a bunch of characters, that in these sort of episodes you figure out that some of the characters have actually met before, like the daughter of Tokiomi and Castor have actually met, like during the fight. And I'm not even sure if Tokiomi realizes this before Castor is gone.
See, right now she's like, wait, why am I hiding? I can't do anything like this. So, she's a good little girl. She just want to help out these kids that are being kidnapped. This actually ties in a lot with her character in Fate Stay Night, where she's dealing with, because growing up as the daughter of a mage, and him dying at some point during Fate Zero means that he couldn't help her complete her training. So he didn't instill in her kind of the mage's mindset, which is to be more pragmatic and while she does try to uphold that somewhat in Fate Stay Night, it's one of the really interesting things about her arc in Stay Night is that she learns to find a way to have her dad be proud of her, but at the same time be true to herself. And the mage teachings kind of conflict with who she is as an individual, and she learns to kind of cope with that. See, that's why I don't like the Unlimited Blade Works anime, because everything I just explained would not have been clear to you if you had watched that show. Oh, that must be like, imagine if you're in her in her position at that moment. That's like a pants shitting moment. God, this guy's such a fucking piece of shit. Just chucking things at him. So even though this episode is arguably lighter than the other episodes, it still has some dark, eerie moments.
Oh, absolutely.
The whole thing with that compass is that it points in the direction where the strongest source of mana is coming from. I hope the big guy won't be too pissed. It's kind of weird because the master is acting more like the servant.
Yeah. I don't remember something happening after.
Yeah, there's going to be something coming up. So that's one of Castor's Cthulhu abominations.
Yeah. I don't remember her being attacked afterwards. Oh!
Well, that is Karya helping her out.
Well, isn't this technically the first time we see Karya using his abilities?
Yeah, I'd say so. So in a sense, it's kind of foreshadowing for what he's capable of.
But also, like, Karya saving Rin, I mean, that's like, he's just got a thing with like, those girls. He's really protective of them.
He's protective of them because he's in love with their mother.
I mean, I feel like that, like, the little adventure part, maybe you could consider that filler, but what happens right here is very, very, like, that's got a lot to do with the main plot. Because these characters were in the same setting in the first episode, during the day when everything was happy and fresh, and now we're almost reaching the midpoint of the show, and you can just see how different it is.
We're also given a better idea at this point of how bad Karya is doing, both physically and mentally.
Yeah.
Like, you could just see, like, not just the fact that one of his eyes looks fucked up, but he's got a bit of a crazed look in his eye. So
yeah,
it gives us a little bit of more foreshadowing as to what his character is going through and what his character is going to go through. That's kind of a shitty thing for him to say, though. He's like, oh, I'm sure someday we'll play in the park again, but he knows he's going to die. He's not going to make it. So in a way, I think he's just trying to give them some words of encouragement, even though they're basically hollow. But she pretty much realizes what's going on. Aw. Now we have the best boy, Kotomine. God, the use of lighting in this show is so good.
Yeah. I mean, the way the light is used with the car lights when she's lying on the back seat, that's some Makoto Shinkai level.
Yeah. And in a way, you can also see this as like a good character moment for Rin, which may not mean much in Fate Zero as a whole, but she's saying here about how she realizes she's not strong enough yet, and she needs to train harder, which you could think of it as something that will eventually bleed into Fate Stay Night. So, yeah, that was episode 10. An episode most people consider to be the worst episode. How do you feel about it after watching it?
I'm a little bit torn because, like, I can easily relate to people being like, this one is a filler. But at the same time, I don't resonate with the idea that it's a bad episode. I think it's good. It's a break from the action. And, some people might feel like that's an unnecessary break, whereas I was just enjoying it.
I want to talk real quick about this idea of like, oh, this is just filler, go back to the main plot. People have this really weird notion of that filler is always inherently bad thing no matter what, and I've never agreed with that. I mean, first of all, then you're basically saying that every episodic show that ever existed is just fundamentally bad, which is stupid. I feel that sometimes a filler episode can be very beneficial for a show. Arguably, a lot of episodes in Naoki Urasawa's Monster can be construed as filler. Even then, a lot of those episodes, I'd say, are still like really great episodes. But in the case of episode 10 here in Fate Zero, yeah, sure, you could probably argue that the episode could have been cut out, and while we would have missed some really nice character moments, it wouldn't have detracted too much from the plot. But I think when you're watching it as a whole, I think it genuinely does add to the experience of watching the show. As you said, adds a nice little break. This is the 10th episode in. I think it does a nice job with the pacing of like, here's a little bit of a break, still having in relevant information. So it's not just completely a side story. There is elements to it that trace back to the main plot, but also I think it's just a good episode on its own, especially some of the more horror elements towards the end of the episode I think are really well done, very well crafted. While I can see why people consider this one of the weaker episodes, I would say that it's still a really good one, and I think the show is better for having it rather than if it was taken out.
Having a couple of episodes which slows down a bit may not be the worst thing, also because that, like, as much as the show is driven on characters, it also is a new world, and to take a few breaks to explore that world is not the worst thing ever. Again, I think I'm gonna stick to my notion that I get why people could live without this episode, but I don't get the idea that it's a bad one.
Yeah, I think it's a good episode. I think it also adds a bit of perspective, because this entire time we've been seeing the show from the perspective of the masters and the servants. And this is the only episode that gives us a chance to see it from an outside perspective, somewhat outside. I mean, she is related to one of the masters. She's the daughter of Tokiomi. But at the same time, she doesn't really have anything to do with the Holy Grail War. But the Holy Grail War is having some effect to the town. Yeah, this crazy fucker has some magic bracelet thing and that he's using to go around and kidnap kids.
That in of itself is new information, you know. The Holy Grail War is going steady, and we get to see a lot of what people are doing, but we haven't seen much of Castor. This episode is like, oh, Castor is actually, like, he's using the abilities of his monster to actually commit even more crimes. And, you know, you could have delivered that information otherwise, but, like, there is a lot of little informations that I feel like overall only strengthens the show. Some would argue that you didn't need an entire episode of doing it, but, like, then you get a nice present in a Rin episode if you are a fan of her character from the other shows.
If we're talking about filler, as far as filler episodes go, I've seen some really bad filler. When I used to actually watch and enjoy Naruto about a decade ago, I actually sat through and watched all of the Naruto filler episodes. So believe me when I say, you can go a lot worse. I'm going to go as far as to say this shits on every single filler episode I ever saw of Naruto. I hope everyone enjoyed this. We will come back when we commentate over either the last episode or maybe the last two episodes. We'll see how we decide to do that. This has been Shintai and Hyper Anime Reviews. Take care, everyone.